left off at the crossroads. The defense had fought for a change of venue, arguing that Sidney and Tammy Moorer could never get a fair trial in a community draped in yellow ribbons, but the court held its ground. The trial would stay here, in the heart of Grand Strand, under the eyes of the people who had searched every inch of the Waccamaw River for Heather Elvis. For years, the Grand Strand was haunted by the single question, where is Heather Elvis? In 2014, when the handcuffs clicked, it felt like a resolution, but today we step inside the courtroom, where the circumstantial web we've been building was finally put to the test. We aren't just looking at a trial, we are looking at a masterclass in how a no-body case is built from the ground up using digital breadcrumbs and the psychological profiles. Before the witness for the kidnapping ever took the stand, we have to talk about the legal maneuver that confused many followers of this case. The indecent exposure charges. On the surface, photos taken in a public place seemed like a distraction from a murder investigation. But for the prosecution, these charges were a strategic anchor. These charges allowed state to keep the Moores in the system while much more complex kidnapping and conspiracy cases were forfeited. But more importantly, they painted a picture of the Moore's character. The prosecution wanted the jury to see a couple who believed they were above the law. This pretrial limbo lasted for years. There was no body. Every piece of circumstantial evidence had to be triple checked. One bad link in the chain and the whole case would collapse. The detectives were under immense psychological siege. They knew who they believed was responsible, but they had to prove it using the invisible data. They were tracking a ghost in the machine. As we move into the testimony, remember that the prosecution wasn't just trying to prove a crime scene at Peachtree Landing. They were trying to prove that the crime was the only logical conclusion to a months-long campaign of jealousy and obsession. Now we have to talk about the voice that finally breached the walls of the Moorer home. Tammy's own brother, Timmy Causey. His testimony was a rare, chilling look behind the curtain. Timmy confirmed that the Moores lived in a state of constant, almost paranoid surveillance. He described a home rigid with cameras that allowed them to monitor the perimeter at all times. But it was the conversations that truly mattered. Timmy testified that Sidney told him they had been pushed to the limit. There were rumors about what might have been seen in the truck, but the reality of Timmy's testimony was more about the panic of cleaning it up. He testified that the Moores were preoccupied with the fear of police finding incriminating items. He highlighted their obsession with their own surveillance footage, the same footage the prosecution argued was used to track Heather's movements before she vanished. When your own blood takes the stand to describe your limit, the circumstantial web becomes a physical reality. We have to turn to the Disney alibi. The Moores claimed they were on the family trip to Disney World during the time frame of the disappearance. On paper, it was a classic defense. Why would you go to the happiest place on earth if you just committed a crime? It provided a convenient excuse to thoroughly clean the black Ford F-150, inside and out, under the guise of preparing for a long road trip. Investigators used cell phone pings and bank records to show that while their hearts might have been in Florida, their digital trail was firmly planted back in South Carolina during the most critical hours of the lure. The predatory loop was the final nail. Thousands of hours of grainy CCTV footage showed a black Ford F-150 cycling Heather's apartment. We've broken down the GPS coordinates that placed this vehicle at the payphone at 3:17 a.m. at the Peachtree Boat Landing shortly after. The state argued it was a calculated hunt, and the jury agreed. The legal path ended with 30-year sentences for kidnapping and conspiracy sentences handed down even without a murder conviction or a body. But as we close the series, we look at the Waccamaw River. 2 people are in prison, but Heather is still out there.